Donald Trump was tough standing up to Xi Jinping. Really, he totally folded to Xi Jinping during COVID, did nothing to try to push back on him at all. Donald Trump really behind the scenes cares about what the right things to do are, that he's a listener, that he listens to people. Like, this is just ridiculous. We all know him, that his biggest flaw is that he's a perfectionist. I mean, do you read his bleats? He doesn't even spell things correctly. But the most important thing I want to pick on is that little exchange you had about, oh, it's so surprising they've never met. Do you know why Trump and Kamala Harris have never met, Piers? Have you thought about it for a second? Do you know why they really haven't met?
Tell me.
In today's video, Tim Miller absolutely destroys Piers Morgan in a heated debate about Donald Trump's presidency in his first term. Now, Piers, being the die-hard Trump defender he is, wants to paint Trump as some kind of perfectionist who carefully listens to his advisors. But Tim isn't having it. He calls out the obvious. Trump doesn't even proofread his own tweets, let alone make well-thought-out decisions. And when Piers brings up how Trump never met Kamala Harris, Tim flips it right back, exposing how Trump was never serious about governing in the first place. This debate gets very intense. So let's dive in and watch how Tim Miller schools Piers Morgan on Trump's presidency.
Because he was a toddler and he threw a temper tantrum after he lost a fair election. And for the first time in America since the Civil War, we did not have a peaceful transfer of power. We did not have a ceremonial transfer of power where the former president, like a man, goes and stands on the stage and greets the next incoming president, where he helps the incoming team with the transition, where the vice president's team meets with the. That didn't happen last time because Donald Trump attempted a coup and he had a temper tantrum and he flew home to Mar-a-Lago just to go golfing,
all of which,
and to hang out with the Cougars on the pool deck.
To be clear, all of which
that's what happened. That's why they haven't met.
Well,
because he tried a coup.
Well, to be clear, at the time I heavily criticised him for all the things you've just said, but that doesn't explain why.
Okay, sure, but Corey Lewandowski comes on your show and he's like, "Oh, Donald Trump and Kamala haven't met."
Well, hang on.
Oh my goodness, wow, that's so interesting. They haven't met, and then Corey's over there saying it's because Kamala is ineffective as a senator.
It doesn't.
No, it's because Donald Trump was supposed to be a deal maker, didn't meet with any of the Democratic senators. He said he was going to be the art of the deal man, but he didn't try to actually do any deals. All he did was insult people on Twitter, and then after he lost to Kamala Harris fair and square and Joe Biden, he didn't have the dignity. But why have a transfer of power for the first time in American history?
I've just said I agree.
Shameful.
I've just said
embarrassing. He's an embarrassment.
I've just said I agree with you. So let's park that to one side.
Well, you didn't say it to Corey. You didn't challenge Corey. It was a very chummy interview. I know you want to get Trump on the show, but it was very chummy.
Okay.
And you didn't challenge Corey that much.
Ask can be chummy too. I don't think I've been unchummy to you. I don't even know you. I've known Corey.
No, we can be chummy.
I've known Corey. I've known Corey a long time.
Somebody that's a close advisor to Donald Trump on the podcast. You think that you could challenge him a little bit? That's all.
I was just going to ask you this question. The point that he made, Corey Lewandowski, was it was surprising to him they'd never met, given that Trump was president for 4 years before the transfer of power, January 6th issues that you're talking about. Why was Kamala Harris, who's one of the 100 senators in the United States at the time, why was she incapable of being able to get into a room with Donald Trump, the president?
How was she not invited? Why did the president not invite her to the White House?
Why didn't she make herself
Donald
invited?
Trump ran.
Isn't that a job of senators?
Come on. Donald Trump ran on this BS nonsense and come on this show. I'm the art of the deal man. I'm a deal maker, which was a book he didn't even write, that got ghostwritten. It was this fake persona. It was this Hollywood persona that he conned the American people into believing that he was some deal maker. Then he gets in the White House and he doesn't even try to work with the Democrats on a deal. All he does is insult them. He does nicknames. He trashes them. He didn't cut any deals. Donald Trump, Joe Biden ended up being the deal maker.
Can I ask you
the bipartisan deal on gay marriage, on infrastructure.
Right,
so that's why Kamala didn't go to the White House. He didn't ever invite her. How about that?
Well, yeah,
Did you try that?
If I was a senator, I'd have made sure I got invited.
Pause. If you're enjoying this video so far, please consider hitting that like button and subscribe. It helps out the channel a lot. Now, Tim calls out how Trump's refusal to accept his loss led to a failed coup attempt and broke a long-standing American tradition, the peaceful transfer of power. No handshake, no meeting, just Trump sulking off to Mar-a-Lago like a sore loser. That's why he and Kamala Harris never met, not because she was ineffective as a senator, like Trump's people try to claim, but because Trump was too busy pouting and golfing. And Tim also brought up how Trump's entire presidency was about self-interest and not leadership. Under his administration, the national debt skyrocketed by nearly $7.8 billion, one of the largest increases in history, despite his claims of being a fiscally responsible businessman. And let's not forget that his much-hyped tax cuts overwhelmingly benefited the rich while doing little for the middle class. Even Trump's trade war with China, which was supposed to make America stronger, ended up costing US taxpayers over $80 billion in tariffs, with American farmers needing a $28 billion bailout to recover from the damage. So much for being a business genius. Piers, of course, tried to downplay all of this, saying he criticized Trump's actions at the time. But Tim wasn't having it. He pushed back, pointing out how Piers goes too soft on Trump's allies, giving them easy interviews without challenging their nonsense. And when Piers asked why Kamala Harris didn't try harder to get in the same room as Trump, Tim just laughed it off. Trump was the one promising to make deals, but he never invited her. End of the story.
But let me ask you, I'm curious about your own journey. You were Jeb Bush's guy, Republican, and now you're a Democrat. How does that happen?
Well, I'm not a Democrat. I left the party in 2020. Very good timing, I thought. In about November of 2020, after the election, I was hopeful. Throughout 2020, I was hopeful that we could get our party back from Donald Trump and get back to a more classical, liberal, traditional party that had a respect for the rule of law, that had a respect for our allies abroad, international relationships, that had a respect for immigration and the immigrant story and how that's an important part of America. I was hoping we could get back to that kind of compassionate conservatism after 2020. And then what happened was Donald Trump lost, and he threw an extended temper tantrum. And rather than standing up to him, rather than telling him, "Sir, Mr. President, it's time for you to accept your loss and move on," all of the Republicans basically went along with it. And everybody participated in this absurd lie, in this absurd fantasy where every Republican was like, yeah, we're worried about the voting machines. And I was so disheartened and discouraged by that I wrote an article saying I was leaving the party. It ended up being totally correct. Over the next 5 years, that now everyone who spoke out against Trump, like Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, has been thrust out of the party, and people who are like embarrassing clowns are made to be the nominee of our party, and like Mark Robinson in North Carolina or Kari Lake in Arizona, simply because they're willing to suck up to Donald Trump. It's not a traditional conservative or a classically liberal party anymore. It's an embarrassment. It's a cult of one man, and I'm very happy to leave it. And I think everything that's happened over the last 5 years has validated all of my criticisms of the party.
Tim made it clear that he didn't leave the Republican Party because he suddenly became a liberal. He left because the party stopped being about conservative values and became a full-blown personality cult for Trump. And he was right. After 2020, rather than accepting his loss like every other president in history, Trump threw a tantrum, pushed baseless election fraud conspiracies, and Republicans fell in line behind him. And let's not forget the January 6th riot. Tim pointed out that Trump's refusal to accept his loss broke a 220-year-old American tradition of peaceful power transfer. Again, no handshake, no meeting, just Trump sulking it off to Mar-a-Lago while his supporters stormed the Capitol. That's not leadership, it's cowardice. At the end of the day, this debate just proved how empty the pro-Trump argument is. Tim brought facts, logic, and actual conservative principles, while Piers tried to defend a man who built his entire political career on lies and grifting. And when it came down to it, Piers simply just couldn't keep up. But this is it for today's video. I hope you have enjoyed. If you did, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comment section down below.